Hi, welcome back to Weatherford Daze. We are here. Second week of Advent officially starts tomorrow, and we're here with our series. We're doing the themes of Advent.
Right.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
I just lost it there for a second. What are we doing?
That's fine.
This week we are going to talk about, honestly, one of the most deep, I feel like, themes. I mean, all of the themes around Christmas time are deep, depending on how far you dive into it, right? But peace is one of those that I think it feels more deep because when we actually think about it, it's not something that we really experience on a wide level ever. I think that when we look at the world around us, we always go, it's just war after war and conflict after conflict. Even in times of so called peace, there's still never peace when you have politics and,
And humans.
yeah, humans. We are people that just really don't get along with each other all that well.
Contentiousness.
Yeah. Peace is something that we say that we want, but we're not very good at maintaining it. And when you look at it that way, it's really discouraging, isn't it? I think that it's something that the kids will take up the mantra of, world peace and all of this. And then I feel like the older that we get, the more jaded we get towards
Yeah.
that idea of just going, it's just never going to happen. But then you look at Christmas and you think Silent Night and the angels proclaiming peace on earth, goodwill towards men. And you go, what does that even mean? And I think that sometimes we have to bring it down smaller, right? You have to go, well, maybe there won't ever be peace in the world, but there can be peace in my family. There can be peace in my heart, peace in my life. So yeah, we're gonna talk about that a little bit more. I think I summarized a bit where we might be
Well, you
wanting to go,
can.
but let's go deeper.
So when the young folk, when they're young, they still think that they can change the world,
Mm.
and that I don't ever want them to lose that passion and get it to be jaded. But I've told my kids that you can pray for change in the world, but you can be change in 100-foot radius. The thing you can change is your attitude and how you treat others and what you bring. And that's all you can control. And you can't control how people are going to react to that, but you can bring peace in a situation. And it may not be world peace globally, but it can be world peace locally with those
Isn't it
around you.
funny that peace is something we have to strive for?
Hmm.
Seems like it should be a contradiction, doesn't
Right.
it?
Right.
And yet, I think that it's one of the most important things that we have to actively work towards, because where it should just be that should be the status quo, that should be the norm. It's not. Conflict is
You
the
should have
norm.
to work to be contentious. It should
Hmm.
have to be difficult. And it's so easy. That's an emotion. That's an action that just it's so quick. If you don't think that contentiousness is quick to happen, you haven't been in a line at the DMV, or you haven't had a 2-year-old. There's always going to be that moment, when someone doesn't get what they want and they want to strive for it and fight for it, and not in such a good way. I am glad that ultimately the promise is of peace. That's the peace that God gives. It's not like the world gives.
So, in thinking about this theme and about this idea of, you know, where do we want to go with the idea of peace, because there are several different angles you can take. But, with us, since we're a channel focused around books and movies, and we're thinking specifically about Christmas, I was thinking, one of my favorite movies,
New favorite because we
new
saw
favorite,
it
it is,
like
it's one we
this year or last year.
last year, we
Yeah.
discovered it last year, is a movie called I Heard the Bells. And it's based off of the story, or the true story, of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, the composer, well, not
Poet.
composer, poet.
It
He
started
wrote
out
the
as a poem,
words,
and
right.
I think they turned it into a carol.
Hmm.
The original poem was called Christmas Bells, and I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day is the name of the song.
Right. Which has long been one of my favorite Christmas carols. I've always thought it's so hauntingly beautiful, and really encapsulates the entire idea of what Christmas is about, the real meaning of Christmas. So yeah, that one's right up there with probably O Come, O Come Emmanuel for me. I think those
Yeah,
are two of my favorite Christmas carols.
and I think honestly, if we are all still on this earth, you could sing I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day about 50 years from now, and it would still
It still
it still
resonates.
resonate. It doesn't have anything in it that ties it into a particular period. It's very universal. I mean, it had a particular time period that it was based out of, but it doesn't have anything in it that you know that says I only can be sung about this one situation. And so,
Hmm.
when I heard the lyrics to it, I'm thinking about now and what we deal with now.
And I think that's just the thing of it. It was written during a time of war, during a time of loss and grieving. And that's something that has always been with us, is just, we, man, if somebody actually experiences a life where there's not a war anywhere in the world, like, that's got to be such a blessing. It just doesn't seem like it happens. We can't go an entire generation without a war in the world somewhere. I mean, we have been fortunate that in our area, we haven't had a war on in our country,
Or on our
on our
home
home
soil.
soil, but we
Um,
certainly have been part of wars around the world. So, but yeah, the the story is, it's gripping. It really is, just to see all of, this very famous poet, and he was actually famous in his lifetime, which I know a lot of authors and poets don't manage to do, but he was. And it's kind of cool because you see his reputation following even his son, as he joined up as a soldier. And yeah, there's one scene where they've got him and his fellow soldiers around the campfire, and he's reading his dad's poetry, and some of the other guys don't believe, that that's his dad that wrote it. It's kind of a cool scene. But
what was the he was before he did Christmas Bells. He was famous for Song of Hiawatha.
Song of Hiawatha, Paul Revere's Ride.
Okay, those are the ones that like people really connected to during.
Hmm.
I seem to remember when they're seeing where they were like some of his publishers were like, couldn't you write something else more like Hiawatha or Paul Revere? And he's like, no, this is personal to me or something. Was that right? They were trying to get him. They're like, that's more something we could be marketable. And this was something that was very personal to him
It
to
seems
write.
like most of the things that he wrote were things that he really was passionate about. He wasn't really chasing money or fame. It just kind of happened anyway, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So it's a really beautiful movie. Highly recommend that one. It's just adding some meaning and some depth to your Christmas, especially if you have a little bit older kids. because there's a lot of tragedy in it. It's a heavy movie, but it's also a beautiful movie, and it's
I
full of
wasn't
hope.
prepared. I wasn't prepared for it when I saw it. I was like,
Yeah.
that happened to him. I was like, oh, poor man. And yet to see something of beauty,
Hmm.
come out of that, and the way the movie ended, it gave you kind of a little hope.
Because he discovers what it means when you come through despair to hope, to despair, that line, and in despair I bowed my head. There
Mm,
is no peace on earth, I said. And just, to move from that line to the ending where it is peace on earth, goodwill towards men. And those Christmas bells actually signaling that there is hope, that Jesus is the one that brings that hope is, yeah, it's hard to put into words how beautiful and how well done that story is. And just how much it resonates with, we all have those times of tragedy when we just see our world kind of collapse around us, and we can lose that hope that there ever will be anything beautiful in our lives again. And to know that our hope for peace in the future is not because of our current circumstances, it's because we're looking forward to Christ's return and Him making everything right again. And I think it's always been kind of the struggle, right? You see in Bible times, like when Jesus came to earth, that expectation of the disciples was that, okay, you're here now, the Messiah's come. And that idea was that you're going to set everything to right now. And
right. It's when they said, when will your kingdom come?
mhm,
And they were looking for a kingdom. The only kingdom that they knew was an earthly one with a king modeled after David, who was also a soldier. So this is a king with a sword. These are all these things that even people that are still looking for the Messiah are looking for those elements of in the Messiah. And he came to save their souls first and their bodies second. He came to save you from being slaves to sin. And they didn't even know they were slaves. Even when they were in that situation, they were slaves to sin. And he was there to rescue them from that first and foremost. And everything else would lead from that.
I think that's the thing. When Jesus spoke about peace, He said, "My peace I leave with
Yes.
you." He left us with a comforter, and He left us with a hope that in the right now, the peace, even though we're not going to see it on earth, we're going to see it in our hearts, because that's where He comes to reside and dwell. And that is way more important than the peace in the world yet.
The other part of that verse that you said, "My peace I leave with you," it said, "Not as the world gives." And I've
Mhm.
been thinking about that. When the world wants world peace, what are they talking about? And it might be nobody fighting, no wars, and I can just relax. All my bills are paid, and I can watch my shows. And I thought about that. I was like, that's what the world. And I was thinking,
But it's not possible.
but not even that. The peace that Christ brings is more than those things, and you can have peace
But until the
in a
entire world
in a world
actually
that's
embraces
in
the
strife.
peace that God brings, there isn't hope for peace on earth, because we have to have the peace in our hearts, and everyone does, because that's not something that you can force on other people. You can
Yeah,
force war on people. You can't force peace on people.
and it's a material peace. It's a peace that is all these things in the world, temporal.
Mm.
And
And,
what about
and
your
you hear the
soul? What
phrase,
about the
right?
peace in your soul?
Peace through strength,
Yeah,
right? And that's as close as we have to being able to have peace on earth, right? Is this idea
Chest bumping and
that we're going to actually
threats.
intimidate
Yeah,
people
there you go.
into not trying to take over or start a war, So it's like you're
Mutual
going,
fear. That would be the word. Mutual fear. I'm
right.
afraid of what you're going to do to me. I don't want you to be afraid of what I'm going to do to you. And then we're just going to, look at each other over the table and go, okay, all right, buddy. Is that real peace? Is that real
And I
peace?
mean, you can have peace at times where everybody mutually decides to put down the weapons and live together.
Just means
But
choosing not to fight. It doesn't mean that they're
then
having
you
peace.
have one person that it kind of reminds me a little bit of Brigadoon.
Oh, do tell.
Well, when you think about the story of Brigadoon,
Mm-hmm.
which, okay, great movie slash musical. If you haven't seen it, that's that's worth looking up just because it's a very, very intriguing idea. But you've got the idea of this town that the movie starts in the 1900s with two hunters who are out in the wilds of Scotland, and they stumble upon this little town that kind of appears out of the mist, right? And the you find out that this town only comes up, like it fades out of existence and only pops up again for one day every 100 years.
Is it almost time traveling? A time traveling town?
Yeah,
In a
they
way?
basically they go to sleep, the village just fades out of view, and then when they wake up, it's 100 years later.
But they
So
never know it.
they aren't
Yeah.
going to be in the world long enough for anything to ever influence them or touch them.
Right.
And this was done because of a prayer for it 200 years ago, which for them is just 2 days ago, by their minister who heard of these witches, I think it was, that were coming their way that had been influencing people. And he basically prayed for God to give them a miracle. But what they had to, in order to keep that miracle going, none of them could ever leave the village. If any of them left the boundaries of their village, then the entire town would disappear forever. So you have one person in that town that's unhappy. It's a young man that was in love with a girl, and the girl fell in love with someone else, and they're getting married. And this guy goes, essentially, if I can't have her, I don't want to exist, and I don't care if I take the entire town with me.
Wow.
So one person and his selfishness, he's willing to sacrifice everyone in the village just because he's decided he can't live this way. And when it comes to peace, that it's the same concept, right? You can have everyone that's decided they want to live in this way. One person is discontented and decides to pick up a gun and start shooting, or whatever, and the peace is broken, it's gone. So it's always, if you don't have everyone that's going to daily
100% buy in.
choose
Yeah.
that this is the way that they're going to live, and it's worth, like we said, the struggle to live in peace,
Right.
then that peace is broken, because it's never the natural state of humanity to live that way. So, anyway, I took over. Where were
No,
you
no.
going?
I think the only one who can bring ultimate peace and the real peace, not only temporal, but internal and eternal, is the Prince of Peace. Now, there is a part of that where he does warn people that it's not going to be easy, and there are going to be divisions even with the family. And I think that was a prophetic thing with the children or of Israel, of Israelites, that there was going to be some that said, that recognize the Messiah is here, and there's going to be some that are not, and there's going to be a split. And the key with that is that even though there's a split, that does not mean there has to be all out war with that. But the Bible does say that things are going to get worse before they get better.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, there's wars and rumors of wars and things like that. But the thing is, do not let your heart be dismayed. Focus on God, focus on Jesus, and know that He hasn't forgotten about you. And there's a peace that you can have that's beyond the world's understanding. It can be almost like, this is an interesting bit, but there was the storm, the hurricane that came into, I believe it was Jamaica. They had a plane fly, I think it was a military plane, where they flew in it, and you could see the eye of the hurricane. I remember seeing it because I was thinking about the song from Hamilton, and my daughter was singing it. But it looks like this big, just cylinder of white cloud, and nothing happened in the middle. And you know that the white cloud is moving at its destruction, but inside it's quiet. There's the eye of the storm, and that has to be you and your soul. It has to be, do you have a inner peace? Do you have a peace that no matter what goes on in the world, because if you're affected by what happens around you and you let that get you riled up and tore up at knots, there are plenty of reasons to feel that way. If you can't avoid it, from the radio to the internet to TV to people around you talking about it, to, in the world. There's going to be something always happening, but you have to have a peace that passes all understanding. Mm-hmm. That's in the eye of that hurricane. And I think that's the important thing. And that's the peace that Jesus can bring. And ultimately, we know that there's going to be a day when the last shall be first and the first shall be last. The lion will lie down with the lamb. There's coming a day, and we have to have that faith that that's coming.
I think that we all kind of wonder at times why God takes so long. Why it is that He's delayed His return for these 2,000 years and counting. But I really do feel like He's giving us all the chance to learn the importance of peace, to grow weary of the strife and the turmoil. And I mean, have you ever noticed how many older people, just the longer they live in life, the fewer conflicts they're willing to have? They just do get to the point where it's like none of that stuff really even matters.
These are people that have
Love,
seen these
just
are people that have
peace.
seen some stuff,
Hmm.
and they are not willing to go there anymore. Feel the greatest generation, and what they've seen. They're not willing to go there
That's
again.
not all of them. You can look at all of those politicians there right now, and I don't think they've learned that lesson yet. But there's a lot that have.
Yeah.
And I really do think there's something beautiful about that lesson that's learned, where, you know, we still have to kind of pick up and carry those burdens and fight those battles. But there is coming a day when we can just lay it down and pass that on to the next generation of going, it's y'all's turn now, but also learn through it all to find your moments of peace. There's still things that are worth fighting for, ideas, ideals. I mean, if you're actually literally having to fight for survival or for protection of your loved ones, those things are always worth striving for and fighting for. There's ideas and ideals that are worth protecting and passing on. And, but there's coming a day when we do get to pass that on to the younger generation and say, it's your turn now. I'm going to just embrace the peace.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to that day.
I love the fact that Jesus is the Prince of Peace, but I think that a lot of people blame a lot of skirmishes and wars on his followers.
Mm,
You have things like the Crusades, or the conflict that's happening now in the Middle East. But I don't think those are anything that you can lay at the feet of Jesus and say, this was your idea. I think this is, I think it's man and his interpretations. And if they truly hew to the words of Christ, they would lay down their weapons and just sit and talk and realize we are all humans. We're all failed beings in need of a savior. And can we just come together and figure this out? But I think that for now, we live in a world that seeks the Messiah's return. I think to bring that peace and to trade the swords to plow into plowshares, and one day that will come again. I think that we wait for that second advent, and with bated breath.
second advent of Jesus, and the second advent, the second week of Advent.
Right.
Let's not wait for that. But I don't know. I think that I love that this is a theme of Christmas that we focus on. I think that it's something that I feel like hope is something that we all kind of naturally do, right? But peace is something that is not as natural. And yet we all do find ourselves longing for it. And it's something that we can all work towards finding those times, even in the busiest time of the year, is just finding those moments of peace, of calm. I think that one of the most important carols is Silent Night, because it's very possible to let the entire Christmas season go by and never have a silent night.
So, well,
Don't you feel?
well, okay. In our case, sometimes we are trying to sleep and someone's still awake, and he's very loud. He's excited and vocal, very vocal. And I was actually thinking about that on the drive home. I was like, Silent Night. Sometimes we have those, sometimes we definitely don't. And
It's not silent though because of anything that is necessarily going on.
right,
Even in the song, it's like it talks about the baby wakes, but it's not about the true silence. It's about the silence in your heart of taking the time to slow down and to just refocus on what it is in your life that's the most important thing and who the most important people are. And figuring out, you know, love. It's about the love, about going, how do I show my love? How do I teach? For parents, you're teaching your children how to find those moments of peace and of joy and of actually teaching them, slow down and savor these moments and treasure them. It's those Ebenezer moments when you go, I'm going to set aside this time and memorialize this because it's something special. There's something intangible here that we're looking for, that we're trying to show how special and how meaningful these moments are around the holidays. The things that, the meaning that weaves itself through all of the traditions and the the decorations and the lights and the songs and the stories, and go, the underlying theme here is loving people, treasuring those moments with your family, with your friends, of appreciating that everything that we have here in our lives is because of that first Christmas when a little baby was born, with the promise that he was going to change the world and the way that we look at the world, the way that we live in and interact with this world for the rest of time. He was going to show us the more that there is to living our life, not just for the physical, but for the heavenly, for the spiritual. That there's this whole other part of ourselves that we can miss out on if we don't learn about the spiritual and how important that is.
I think if we quiet our minds during this season and don't be afraid to distract yourself from what's going on in the world, maybe just for a moment with your family, but sometimes put those distractions down and focus on them and think about why we're doing what we're doing and find that moment when you can really have a quietness of spirit and let that kind of take you through the rest of the holiday. And think about like a silencing of all the buzz and the noise for half a moment, for just a little bit of moment in time, and think about why we do what we do and who we do it with.
So we had a good movie that kind of represents peace and finding, the true meaning of the season. Couldn't really find any books that were really heavy on peace. I think that a
I
lot of
haven't been reading anything recently that was very peaceful. It was just interesting, but not peaceful.
I did I finished up that trilogy that I talked about last time,
Hmm.
the We Three Kings trilogy, and it's funny because the third one, the first one was Child
Child of
of
Joy.
Joy, the second one was Child of Hope, and the third one, no wait, I think the third one's Child of Hope. What's the second one? Oh, now I can't remember. The third
Love
one,
child. My love child.
Child of Joy. I think it might have been Child of
Faith or something? No.
Love, Child of Joy, Child of Hope, Child of, I can't remember. That's going to drive me crazy.
Voodoo
Anyway,
child.
but the third one is Child of Hope. And as much as that would have been, that was our topic last week, was hope. But to me, there was also a very strong theme of peace in the book because this one was dealing with the third brother of, like I mentioned last week, that it's a trilogy, one for each of uh, triplets, a set of triplets, siblings, and them finding through a single mother or a single father for the girl, that each one of them, kind of the child drew them together with this other person, and then they fall in love through that, the interactions there, all kind of based around Christmas. The third one is about the third sibling's Hayden, who was in a car accident with his father. His father was killed in that accident, and he was left severely injured, which even at this point, it's like 6 years after the accident happened. And he has just had to have surgery after surgery after surgery. But the last surgery that he had was supposed to be the final one that he needed before he was going to be able to walk again. And he ended up having, after the surgery, it got infected, and he ended up having to have his foot amputated.
Hmm.
So it just left him devastated and without hope. But even before that, it was still something that this entire time he hasn't really handled the he hasn't handled anything in his life well. He gave up hope, and but he it was because he took on the guilt. He felt like it was his fault that the accident had happened and that his dad had died, because his dad was distracted, and because they were in an argument
Hmm.
over his life and the choices that he was making in his life. And it just, mentally, he's not been in a good place. He's been in this, battle. And even though his family, has loved and supported him this entire time, he's just resisted. He hasn't, they're like, he went to therapy for a while, but he wasn't willing to do what the therapist recommended to heal
Hmm.
because he felt like he didn't deserve to heal, like he deserved what had happened to him. So there's a lot of, just healing going on there. And through it all, I'm going, this story is about find, it's child of hope. So you're getting hope, but he's finding peace, which gives him the ability to hope. And I think that ultimately that that is what peace does. If we can't find peace in our lives, then it's not easy to find hope. It's not easy to find joy. It's not easy to allow love to touch our hearts if we can't come to that place of peace in our own internal storms, the battle that goes on in our minds of, are we worthy of hope? Are we worthy of love? Are we worthy of, of any of the good things that are being offered to us? That tends to be something that a lot of times we all face in
Mm.
our lives, of just, it's that guilt of sin that we go, we've done so much that we can't. But I mean, that is how the enemy gets us, right?
Mm.
The enemy of our souls, Satan, he'll use that guilt to destroy our peace, to take away our ability to be effective in sharing love. And so, that ultimately, when Jesus was called the Prince of Peace,
Right.
when we hear, joy to the world, the Lord has come, peace on earth, goodwill towards men. That message of Christmas is that Jesus came to conquer death, to cover over our guilt and our sin by his sacrifice so that we can have peace. So, will we ever see peace in the outside skirmishes?
Peace
Who
in our
knows?
time.
But we can have peace in our hearts.
Right.
And that hope we renew and we dwell on every year at Christmas. So, with that, we're going to say peace out. Sorry.
No, that's good. That's good.
So, yeah, we'll see you guys next week, and we hope that you all have a beautiful Christmas season.
And tonight, sleep in heavenly peace.
Bye.